In this video, we're going to be talking about how to find area and circumference of a circle. In order to do either of those, we got to figure out what this thing called pi is. Pi is a symbol. It is also equivalent to a decimal value. And we get that decimal value by finding the answer to a ratio. So dividing two numbers. A ratio comparing circumference the circumference to the diameter. And if you divide the circumference by the diameter, you get this decimal value called pi. Pi is also written as a symbol. It looks like two parallel lines with a little tilde or squiggle at the top, and that is the symbol we'll be using for pi. Also, some important things to know about circles. If we draw a line from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle, that distance or line is called a radius of the circle. And we could draw any kind of radius. It doesn't have to specifically be right here. We could draw a radius here. We could draw a radius over here. Any line that goes from the center to the outside is called a radius. If we draw a line that goes from one side of the circle through the center to the other side, so it can't just be a line like this. That would not be what this is. This is called a diameter. And a diameter measures the distance from one side of the circle through the center to the other side. And it has to go through the center, otherwise it is not a diameter. Think about how many radii, that's the plural of radius, how many radii are in one diameter? Well, here's one radius, here's another radius, so two radii equal one diameter. So we would say that 2r equals d. D is our shorthand for a diameter. This letter R stands for radius. So two radii, or two radius, equals one diameter. We're going to use that in a little bit here. To find the area of a circle, you square the length of your radius, and then multiply that by the value of pi. Some people like to say pi r squared. To help them remember. It's a silly way of remembering, but a circle is circular and a pi is a circle, and so for some reason saying that pi r squared helps you remember the formula. So if that helps, good. If not, then any way that you can remember that radius squared times pi, or pi times radius squared, is the area formula for a circle. To find the circumference, and circumference means basically the perimeter of the circle. It's a fancy way of saying perimeter of a circle. Circum, this prefix right here, means around or the outside of something. And so circumference is talking about the distance around a circle. Or you can think of it as the perimeter of the circle, the distance around it. Find that distance, you multiply 2 times the radius, and then multiply that by the value of pi. So be careful here. Multiplying by 2 is not the same as squaring. Squaring is where we multiply something by itself, and multiplying by 2 is doubling something, so not the same thing there. Be careful. Alright, let's do some examples here. How do we find the area of a circle given the radius of 6? And you'll see lots of problems where they will give you one of three things. They'll either give you the radius, or they'll give you the diameter, or they'll give you the area, or they'll give you the circumference, and then they ask for the other bits and pieces. So we're going to work forwards in that respect for the first couple examples, and then we'll start doing some of those trickier ones where we have to work backwards. So if the radius is 6, what's the area? We'll just plug in 6 for your r here. So we would say 6 squared times pi equals the area. That's the same as 36 times pi. And this right here is called in terms of pi. Sometimes you'll be asked to give answers in terms of pi. And when they say something like that, you don't actually have to multiply by 3.14. You can leave it with the symbol. And we would say 36 pi. Other times, we'll do it slightly different for a circumference here, but other times they'll say use 3.14. Use pi equals 3.14, or they'll tell you whatever value they want it to be. Maybe they give you more decimal values of pi. Pi is a continuous decimal. It's a non-repeating decimal, an irrational number. And there are actually contests to see who can memorize the most numbers in pi. And I believe some people have gone over 100 decimal values, just memorized that many values of pi. It's pretty crazy. So if it says use pi equals 3.14, then actually do the multiplication and get your decimal value. If it says in terms of pi, leave it as the symbol. Alright, let's find the circumference. Circumference is 2 times the radius times pi. So 2 times our radius of 6 times pi would give us 12 pi. And we could leave that in terms of pi, or we could actually multiply by 3.14. And if you did that, hopefully you get something like 37.7 if we want to round to the nearest tenth. If we want to multiply our area, you could get approximately 113. So either way, either in terms of pi, use the symbol, or use the decimal value of pi to get a decimal value here. Excuse me. Let's do another one. A little trickier radius value here. An irrational value. Again, to find the area, just square this number. So let's practice squaring something that looks like that. And multiply that value by pi. Remember that squaring is multiplying something by itself. So if you rewrite it twice and multiply, it may help you remember to use all the values there. So multiply the numbers in front together. 3 times 3 is 9. And then the square root of 2 squared, or the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, means to get rid of our radical. It is the opposite. Squaring a square root is the opposite, and we're left with the number underneath. Or you could say the square root of 4 and then get the value of 2. So 9 times 2 times the square root of pi would give us 18 pi. Or if we want to use the decimal value, we could get approximately 56.5-ish, somewhere in there. Find the circumference, we would double our radius. So 2 times quantity of 3 times the square root of 2 times pi. So again, multiplying, we only multiply the numbers without radicals. 2 times 3 is 6. We leave the square root of 2 there. We also leave the symbol pi there. So we could say 6 times the square root of 2 pi, or we could actually find the square root of 2, that decimal value, multiply that by your decimal value of pi, and multiply that by 6 to get approximately 26.6. So again, it just depends on the instructions given, whether it's a test or homework. In terms of pi, leave the symbol. Use 3.14 to get the decimal value. Alright, let's start working backwards, a little trickier here. If you're given the area and you're asked to find the radius, then set up your formula. R squared pi equals the area that they gave you, 49 pi. So the area equals the area that they gave you. And then solve for r. Using a little bit of algebra here, if we divide both sides by pi, we can get rid of pi, because something divided by itself is 1. That leaves us with r squared equals 49. And then to get r by itself, undo that square by square rooting, and the square root of 49 is 7. So our radius is 7. And if you want a little shortcut tip, if they give you an area in terms of pi, then really your radius is always going to be the square root of the number in front. So the square root of 49 is 7. But that's only if they give it to you in terms of pi. To find the circumference, again, set your formula up. 2r times pi equals radius is 7, so we would substitute our 7 now that we know our radius. And we would get 14 pi, that would be in terms of pi, or we could turn that into a decimal value if we need to. Alright, let's say that they give us the circumference. And we're again asked to find a couple other things here, the radius and the area. Let's first find the radius because we need that for the area. Also, I forgot to tell you earlier that because 2 radius equals pi, or sorry, equals d, what am I saying? Because the diameter is 2 radii, we could also substitute our circumference formula where it says 2r pi. We could substitute our 2r and say diameter times pi instead. That is also a formula to use for circumference. So if they give you the diameter, you don't have to cut it in half only to multiply it by 2 again. You can just use the diameter times pi to get the circumference. Sorry, little side note. Alright, back to this. Circumference, 20 pi. So we know that 2r pi equals 20 pi, or just d pi equals 20 pi. So if we set it up using that little cheat, hopefully you can see here that really the diameter is 20. So the radius is always half the diameter, so the radius is 10. The area would be that radius squared, or 10 squared times pi. So our area would be 100 pi. Alright, last thing to talk about circles is what is a semicircle? A semicircle is a half circle. So if we find the area of a full circle, then we can just cut that in half to find the area of the half circle. Or if we find the circumference of the full circle, we can just cut that in half to find the circumference of the half circle. So let's say we're given a diameter of 26, and that doesn't matter whether it's a full circle or a half circle, it's going to be the same thing. It doesn't change. So the circumference would be diameter times pi, or just 26 pi divided by 2, because it's a half circle, so we would get 13 pi. That's our final circumference. To find the area, use our area formula. First you need the radius. So the radius is always half the diameter. Radius is 13. So 13 squared, radius squared times pi. 13 squared is 169. We got pi attached. If we divide that by 2, we get the area of the semicircle. So half of 169 is 84.5. And we still got pi there. We can multiply by 3.14 to get our full area, or leave it in terms of pi. There we go, a little bit of circle math, circumference and area. Good luck practicing finding either of those, or working backwards to find the radius or circumference.